Well, thank you very much. That was a great introduction. I appreciate the opportunity and the privilege to be here to speak to you. Does money buy change, or can money buy change? I just want to say a few things just in considering this question that I think we need to consider as we look at it. One is, so is it change we really want? Or what kind of change are we after? Is that change an improvement? So we can certainly see that any incentive or reward, whether it's monetary, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, may create a behavioral response or an activity-based response, but there are also some unintended consequences that may go along with that. What we need to do is be very thoughtful and identify very clearly what it is that we're trying to buy, or change for that matter. And I'll talk a bit more about that. The other is, so what kind of change are you looking for in terms of duration? Is this a short-term attention grabber, a carrot that gets you from point A to point B, that allows you to see a quick modification that isn't necessarily something that is requiring sustainability? Or are we looking for the long haul, sustained change, a transformation? And I want to speak just a few minutes on that as well. I touched on it, but there are many intrinsic and extrinsic motivations and therefore rewards. And to think it's all about money isn't necessarily being as holistic in our approach as we should be. Having said that, from a policy perspective, money and what it buys is a huge policy lever. It allows us to do things that otherwise might not be possible. We can't legislate our way through or set policy or standards to create the kind of system that we're after. I also think it's important just to touch on, and I probably will run out of time before I get to it, we'll see how it goes, but this notion of whether we're really trying to buy change at the individual level, at the team or group level, or at the organizational level. And I think it makes a great deal of difference in how you set up and establish, whether it's individual pay for performance or organizational funding methodologies that you're trying to create some end that you have in mind. But what I wanted to start with is to talk about what money actually might be capable of inducing. And it's actually from a constraint perspective. I'm not going to do this quote justice, but I believe it was Winston Churchill who said at one point, "Gentlemen, there is no more money, so now it's time to think." And what we have right now in this country, well, except for Saskatchewan, is a great deal of constraint. Okay, come on, this is some of my best stuff here. It's difficult being from a province with growth and prosperity when everyone around you is suffering. Okay, I had to pause there. What I wanted to say is that right now as a nation, and in fact we're feeling this globally, constraint has actually forced us to think in innovative and creative ways. We've often seen at provincial or national levels where there's a bit more abundance. It doesn't require us to be as thoughtful or as innovative or as creative. Even at the organizational and team level, if there's plenty of resource around, generally what we do is we throw resources at the problem. In fact, we likely don't even worry about the problem itself, we worry about the symptom. It doesn't force us to dig through and peel back that onion, to look at the various layers and levels and identify what the true nature of the problem is. Rather, why do that when you've got a Band-Aid solution? Resources, money, people. Far greater in terms of our thinking is in times of constraint, we're able to pull teams together. And this would be the same in the private sector from what I've read, the corporate world, where a particular firm or industry faces a crisis. They've usually been motoring along fairly well and have become complacent in their thinking because the money was there. It perhaps will always be that way. But when they face and hit that proverbial wall, there's this notion of standing back and becoming really focused on what's important. So I would say that it's not only money as in addition or incrementalism that creates change, it's also constraint and restraint that allows us to think in far more creative ways about what it is that we can do, how it is that we can take a look at evidence-based decisions, look at what's going on in other jurisdictions, learn from each other, and apply those learnings. Now, I mentioned a bit about this notion of intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. And I want to say this, and I'm going to take it right down to the individual level. One of the basic problems that I'm struggling with right now is our own scheme within Saskatchewan around pay for performance. And it was a conference and a series of discussions that I've heard people talk about money as a reward to be able to prompt behavior and attention. Now, I want to be really clear. When you set up pay for performance schemes, my view is that it does do something. The question is are we going to be able to perpetuate that something and ensure that that something is actually what it is that we intend to create? So if I were to say to you in a very technical way, I want you to build 5 more widgets, and I give you an incentive to build 5 more widgets, you've got something that's easily measurable, identifiable, fair that I can assess that, and I can pay you accordingly. I can tell you that the next 5, unless you become more efficient, you're going to be looking for that same monetary reward. Now, the difficulty with this is if I say to you as a team that our challenge today in Canada is to transform the health system, to truly put the patient and their family at the center, to be able to build the kind of structures and teamwork that will take us from where we're at today to one of the highest performing systems on the globe. And then I turn around and ask you, what's that worth? You're going to have a damn tough time putting a price tag to it. Because if I say, well, it's worth $2,000 on your pay for performance at year end, if you're in, you say, well, that's not enough. Of course it's not. And in fact, there's not much that I can put to in terms of tagging an appropriate amount. What is that Visa commercial? That's priceless. I'm actually not after just your minds, but your heart in terms of being able to motivate a change, a desire, an inner spirit to be able to bring out your full potential to be able to move the health system along. And in fact, if I think I could pay my way out of this, maybe that's been the problem thus far, is that we think we can simply shovel more resources into a healthcare system and not end up with the same outcomes that we've had year after year. Maybe it's time to shift that paradigm and to start thinking about, yes, pay being important. In fact, I would suggest that on the individual level, what pay is more than a motivator it's a demotivator. If you don't get enough, you're certainly not too happy. When you get enough, it may prompt your attention if you get more, but each and every year, your attachment to money for work or action, your hunger will increase. So $10 this year, $20 next, $100 the year after. Many of the things we're called to do in our daily lives are not about getting remunerated. So just a bit of a thought experiment. I've been thinking through and reading Einstein's approach to thought experiments. So not that I know how to do this, but I want you to reflect a bit on why you're here today. How many actually received a financial incentive to be here today? You don't have to put up your hands, but reflect on it. What is it that motivated you to attend? I mean, there's shopping. You're here at a keynote. I'm not sure why you're here, but each of you know that you have an inner desire to be here. Or your boss is here and you're forced to be here. Could be a number of factors, right? The bottom line is we're more complicated than just simply how much you pay us. But please, pay us sufficient enough amount that we can maintain a healthy standard of living. Now, I mentioned individuals, that's one, but how about teams? And as soon as we start talking about the endeavor of healthcare or population health or any complex system and systematic approach, we're really talking about team and team motivation. This is where individual pay for performance becomes very dangerous, if not properly constructed. And in terms of unanticipated consequences, what you may end up doing is preventing that which you promote. Properly constructed methods by which to motivate a team is as much about team targets as it is about individual targets. And I'm not sure that any of us have that quite right yet, because we talk a good talk about working in teams. But frankly, there are very few examples, at least in the health sector. There are a growing number of them, but very few still examples of where this has been successful. Likewise, at the organizational level, it's extremely important that we think through our methods by which we allocate resources. This is as important from a fairness and equity standpoint as it is from a challenge in terms of being able to motivate proper behaviors. Let there be no mistake that financial incentives matter at all of these levels. I'm not discounting it. So if you're on a piece rate system of fee for service, you better believe you're going to get more volume. If that's what you want to purchase, then that may be the method you choose. What I'm getting at, though, whatever the method, whatever the approach, it's insufficient to try and achieve the kinds of excellence that we are after with respect to the health system and moving it forward. One last point around whether change is an improvement. We need to be, and I mentioned this earlier, need to be absolutely with intent, state with intent what it is that we're after. The only way we're going to be able to evaluate it is at the end of the day to understand whether the change was actually an improvement. To be able to actually understand that there were certain consequences that were unintended, the only way to know that is to be intentional about the consequences that you're seeking. What it is that you're after, what it is that you're purchasing. And I'll leave you with just one last point, and that is that reinforcing once again, from my perspective, human nature is not just simply the resources that we receive. It's about a much deeper meaning and purpose to the work and to our contribution. And for that, we need a much broader view of the world in terms of both intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. So with that, I'll pause and thank you very much.